What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to some statements that the Canadian ambassador to the United States said in a recent interview where she was basically asked about her thoughts on the United States and some of the things that Donald Trump has been doing lately. So, as an American, I thought this would be really interesting to take a look at. I've actually never heard the Canadian ambassador, Kirsten Hillman, actually speak before. So let's take a look.
You've had the privilege of being in Washington for more than 8 years, including the last 6 as ambassador. What's your honest take of how things have changed between the first Trump term and the current Trump term?
Wow. A Canadian that's been this close to the American government for the last 8 years. What a fascinating or maybe unlucky 8 years to have this job. Oh my God.
Yeah, they've definitely changed. I think everybody sees that. I think there is a level of unpredictability that people see. It was in the first term, and I think it's greater now. But I think more importantly, there are some foundational aspects of our relationship with the United States and the U.S.'s relationship with the world that are being questioned now in ways that they weren't in the first term.
Oh my God. I can't help but first and foremost acknowledge she's very eloquent. She's very well spoken. She's obviously very intelligent. And it's if you have seen any of my other videos where I have reacted to a lot of American politicians or Trump or our ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, it's like they are not so enjoyable to listen to or thoughtful or so anyway, this is honestly very refreshing, sadly for me.
I was talking to a colleague of mine recently. We used to use here in the embassy a big poster that we have that shows a hamburger. And this hamburger
Okay.
was designed to tell a very positive story about Canada-US collaboration.
Oh, I thought please don't tell me that at the Canadian government embassy ambassador place that they represent the United States with a big picture of a hamburger. Is it really? No, I don't think. I was getting worried that's what she was saying, but it's not exactly what she's saying, but it's kind of what she's saying. The hamburger represents the relationship between Canada and the US. If you keep feeding us hamburgers, we're happy? Or
So this hamburger was made from wheat grown in Manitoba and beef grown in Texas and tomatoes grown in Ontario and, et cetera. And we said this is the strength of our relationship is that we build things together, we keep our people fed together, we have these very efficient, supply chains together. And
okay, I know the analogy is going to keep going, but this is much more eloquent and reasonable than the analogy I was expecting.
that was always a huge selling point. That was always something very, very positive down here. But now we see more and more, not everywhere, but we see more and more a sense of no, that kind of integration, that's not what the US is looking for. They're really looking for America first and America for America and to do things more on their own.
Yeah, I mean, God, it's kind of sad hearing it stated so plainly and sort of you can't even argue with it. Like the United States, what the message that we've been projecting, especially to Canada, she's spot on. We've been projecting this certainly America first, which by definition means we don't care about the well-being of other countries, or we are now willing to do things like tariffs and trade policies and even threaten military or economic damage and threats onto other countries. When you really step back and like look at everything we've done in the last year, it's kind of terrifying what the United States is willing to do for this America first idea. Whereas, yeah, you can't help but laugh, or else you'd cry about some of this stuff. America was doing pretty good, like, well, the past couple decades, by the way, until now. And our relationship with Canada and a lot of countries around the world was very, very good. And it was very good for the US. Selfishly, I'm going to say, our relationship with a lot of countries was good, if not better, for us already in a lot of ways. So what Donald Trump has done coming in and ruining all that is really mind-boggling. And it's not good for us at all. So obviously, as the Canadian ambassador to the US, she has noticed all of this.
Do you think the Canada-US relationship can recover? I know Canadians sitting at home are so concerned about what's going on in this country. You must hear that all the time.
Oh, okay. I'm a little scared to press the play button. I don't know if I want to know the answer to this. I do, but I don't. I want it to be a certain answer, because this is the question. This is the $1,000,000 question, or the $1,000,000,000,000 question, perhaps these days with inflation. But can the relationship between the U.S. and Canada ever be mended? I've had my thoughts about that, but this is like a representative of Canada answering the question. So
I think the Canada-US relationship has changed and will not go back to what it was, at least for a very long time, if ever. I think.
You know what? The truth hurts sometimes. Truth hurts. But you don't want to like pretend things aren't how they are. You don't want to like, you don't want to kid yourself. And she's not at all, unfortunately. I think that's accurate. That's probably about right. The relationship between the US and Canada, as long as this has been going on, it's been over a year now that the madness really started. Like, with everything that's been done, things can't go back to the way they were. Especially with Canada, literally. I mean, you guys are starting to literally reorganize your trade deals and trade relationships, manufacturing line, things that take a long time to set up and are a real pain to reorganize. And Canada is actually doing that stuff to lower its reliance on the United States. And once that happens, it's done. Like, even if Donald Trump gets out of office in a few years and our relationship gets better, there are certain things happening right now, not to mention like just the trust between our countries, that would maybe be impossible to rebuild. So she's right.
I think people talk about, just a loss of trust, maybe, and that's a hard thing to build back. Again, this country is vast and diverse, and there are millions of Canadians and Americans who do things together every day: business, relationships, education. We have, we study together. We do all sorts of research together. There's all sorts of things. Our armed forces work together. Our security services, our policing services. So there's tons of things that we do together every day, all day, and we will continue to do that.
Right. I mean, that's a good that's a good point. Logistically, like, Canada and the US are so incredibly intertwined at this point. She gave a lot of good examples of all the ways like that you don't even think about that we are intertwined. And that will like remain, I'm sure, in those ways, but fundamentally, like, the relationship is, people will remember this for a very, very, very long time. Yeah.
But I think Canadians are approaching the relationship as a whole in a little more clear-eyed and perhaps a little bit more wary. But it's good for us. It's good for us because we need to be sure that we are putting Canada and Canadian interests first, that we are ensuring that we're doing as much as we can for ourselves and not taking for granted some things that have been stable down here for a long time.
It's really unfortunate that Donald Trump, with his policy of America first, has had such a profound effect on, right now the global economy is like destabilized. A lot of countries are trying to rework their idea of, not really doing business with the United States or trade or even relying on our military for stuff or a lot of stuff. And it's really bad for the U.S. But funny enough, for Canada, I guess what I'm trying to say is Donald Trump has kind of changed the rules for a lot of countries, not in a good way. I think we were very much at a point in history where a lot of countries were working together for mutual benefits. It was a very global economy, and a lot of trust and a lot of good stuff. And now, with America kind of leading the way with this very selfish, very self-centered America first thing, it's kind of forcing other countries to follow that, like Canada. And it's probably the right thing to do at this point. So Canada has to do what is best for Canada. Where it used to be, Canada and the U.S. will do what's best for themselves and each other, and we'll kind of we'll all kind of help each other along the way. That sounds a lot nicer, and it was better. And now it's like, I'm afraid that the world is taking a turn here, where it's like America first, Canada first, UK first, China first. It's like just everyone's country first. And that era of collaboration and mutual benefit is ending, or not to get too dark or deep or yeah, but obviously Canada has to, do what's best for Canada, and I don't blame you one bit for not wanting to trust or rely on the United States.
Where's that sort of line? Because you talk about, in one sense, this sort of being a prodding for Canada to do better, and the Prime Minister certainly has talked about expanding trade relationships beyond the United States. But on the other hand, you've got the Treasury Secretary and the State Department sort of entertaining Alberta separatists at the same time and getting involved in domestic Canadian politics. And so where's the line between genuine concern and this sort of wake-up call to do better as Canadians?
Well, I think we do both. I think that Canadians should be, I was saying how, there's a real focus here in the United States on America doing things for Americans.
Yeah.
And there's a focus on that in Canada too, right? There are a lot of things, as I say, I think there are opportunities that have been provided to us, or impetus. There's been an impetus in Canada to maybe make some changes that we could have made a while ago that are important for our own economy. Interprovincial trade, large infrastructure projects, doing as much as we can to be our own best customer. Those kinds of policies are really, really important. Yes, there's trade diversification. Yes, there's investment diversification. But first and foremost, the kind of strong feelings of Canadian pride that have come out of this, I think, are excellent and important for us.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, none of this is good. What has happened, I should say. What the U.S. has done is not good. For us or anybody, really. But what might come as a result is a Canada that's more self-sustaining and self-reliant, which is, again, that's not good for it's so stupid what we've done. Because it's selfishly, as an American, if you think about it, it's very good to have other countries rely on you. That's a very good place to be. And in many ways, that's kind of how it was for a lot of countries, not just Canada, for a lot of countries we do trade with. That's a good position for the U.S., and we have ruined it. Yeah. That's like the sort of selfish bias point of view.
As to how this government interacts with issues around Canadian sovereignty, I think that they would be wise to be very cautious and tread lightly there. But I guess what I would say here is I saw those comments, but I'm here every day. And my team is around this country every day and in all corners of this administration.
Okay.
And we are not hearing any particular interest in engaging at
Okay.
any broad level on these key domestic issues. I don't.
So it's mostly just like talk. It's trolling. Which, I mean, that's one of the most frustrating things about maybe having Donald Trump and the Trump administration is you literally never know when they are trolling, when they are just saying things to say things, and when it's real, and when it's consequential. But saying those things, just the words, that's consequential. That saying words, if you're a politician, will move the markets, will move the stock market. Like, it has very real world consequences. But that's just one example of why a lot of countries don't really want to do business with us, don't want to invest in the US, because when you're looking for a country to do that with, you want something you can have confidence in, that is trustworthy and reliable and consistent. That's like the fundamental of investing in finance. And the US used to be that. And again, I shake my head because it's like we've truly ruined something that was really quite good for us.
I think that is, and hopefully there won't be, but there's not a lot of take up there.
Does that extend to trade as well, this idea that you might have one or two people in the administration doing something, but that is not necessarily the official position of the administration?
So something that is crystal clear is that there is one person who decides American policy, and that's the President of the United States. He decides what is, what his government is going to do, and that is there's really no questioning about that.
Yeah.
So, but what he does have is he has teams of people who he has tasked with advancing issues. So on the trade front, we have the United States Trade Representative, Jameson Greer, who is our principal interlocutor on the CUSMA review, for example. And he's a fellow who is following the process that is set out by law for the United States in engaging in this review process. He's somebody I have known for many, many years, and he is a trade professional. So,
This is a very long, convoluted way of kind of saying, should Canada be concerned about people in the Trump administration making stupid threats like taking Alberta? And her saying, no, not really. It's only Donald Trump. You should be really worried about what he says and does, which is probably true.
We will work with him and Mexico will work with him to come to the best solutions possible. But the ultimate decision, and everybody in the U.S. administration from top to bottom will say this, ultimately they recommend to the president and he will decide. I mean, that's true with any leader, but it's certainly true with President Trump.
Imagine being like one of the people who goes into Trump's office and recommends him stuff. I don't know. I know that's kind of a random thought, but it's just thinking what the heck goes on? I don't know. I can't help but think about that stuff. You go in and you're trying to make all these intelligent recommendations, and he's like, but what if we conquered Greenland? And you're just like, huh? I don't know. Why are you saying that?
Do you think of your own personal situation and heading back to Canada, but also your time in the United States, what do you want Canadians to think about their American neighbors right now that extends beyond what they may see on the news and beyond what's happening just in Washington?
Wow. I like the questions that this guy is asking, because that's a fascinating question for me. What does she want Canadians to know, like about Americans that isn't negative?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you for asking it because I have been here, as you say, for 8.5 years. I've traveled this entire country. I've met every governor. I've been top to bottom, side to side. And Americans are, diverse. They are
Kinda.
doing all the same kind of things Canadians are doing. They're on factory floors. There's farmers. There's researchers. There's people working in office towers. There's every kind of American, and ultimately they want what everyone wants. They want sort of a good life for their family. They want a good future. They want some stability.
That's absolutely true. 1,000% true. Fundamentally, everyone just wants life and happiness and whatever brings you that, and stability, or yeah.
And I think that's why our ties are quite strong, right? And historically and geographically. So what I
Oh, you know what? I was thinking with that thought was I think that's why a lot of Americans aren't like I feel like a lot of Canadians have confusion around how Donald Trump got elected again, or why more Americans aren't even more upset about what's going on, or a lot of Americans are very upset about what's happening and don't agree with a lot of the things Donald Trump has been doing, but even people who voted for Donald Trump, like his approval rating is in the garbage tank, for God's sake. And some of the things are just ludicrous. The Greenland thing and annexing Canada thing. The tariffs are a huge fail. Markets are down. Anyway, but why don't Americans like do more or care more? A lot care, but I think it has to do with this. That fundamentally, this extends like past the United States, even for anybody around the world. All you really care about is like, do you have a stable job? Can you afford your rent and have food? Some amount of happiness, if that's playing your video games or TV, your TV show, your Stranger Things, or hanging out with your kid or your family or whatever. That's fundamentally like, as long as people have that, they can put up with a lot. And I think for a lot of Americans, like as insane as what's happening in the US and what the US is doing, for a lot of Americans, they just aren't like at the point where they are passionate enough to do something because it hasn't personally like interfered with their day-to-day life and all those things that are most important. If that makes any sense.
would say to Canadians is it's essential that we not lose sight of the fact that this relationship has changed and will, I think, as I said, be changed for a long time. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of good things that we can do in the United States with our American friends, and that
Hey.
there aren't a lot of Americans who are deeply committed to the Canada-US relationship.
Hey, yeah, hey. Joking aside, I really appreciate her saying that because that's true, and it's optimistic, but also I think realistic. Like for a lot of people, like just what Donald Trump has done to Canada is not representative of what Americans think of Canada. Not even close.
And I will sort of give as an example this. We have had more high-level visits to Canada from senators, from CEOs, from governors in the last 8 months than I think we have had in my entire tenure. So there is
Wow.
a huge contingent of Americans who want to come to Canada to say, we appreciate you, we appreciate this relationship, we want to make sure it stays strong. So I think we need to have both things, a little bit of open-eyed understanding of how to best take care of ourselves, but also realize that this is a big and diverse place.
I have a huge amount of respect for any Canadian who puts in any effort to entertain the nuance of like, okay, there's like Donald Trump and the US government, and people who agree with what he's doing. And then there's the majority of Americans who are really not happy with what's going on. Um, and Canadians who kind of, because it would be totally understandable at this point if a Canadian was like, I hate America. I hate them. I hate them for electing Donald Trump. I hate them for allowing this bad stuff to happen to Canada and the globe, and he's threatening everyone and ruining all these things, and I would understand that if any Canadian had that point of view. But so I have a big amount of respect for any Canadian who's like, well, there's nuance here between like who's responsible, who agrees with this, who I should be angry at. And that can be really, really difficult to do at times.
Yeah, and we've seen you out state to state building those relationships. Hopefully they endure past whatever political chaos is happening in Washington. With that in mind, do you have any advice for your successor, Mark Wiseman, as he takes the job?
Well, I think
Oh, right. So she's retiring, I believe. So there's a new. This is like the only time I'm ever going to see her talk, I guess. It's too bad because I like her. She has a successor coming. Okay.
it's exactly that. I think he needs to be building relationships here in Washington for sure, very important. But not just with the administration, with the Hill, with there's a lot of people of influence in this city that are not, let's just say, in front of the camera. They're behind the scenes. Really building those networks, very important. And then getting out of Washington, because America is a lot more than Washington, D.C.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. I never think about Washington, D.C. America is like, it's got a lot of big cities. It's much more than New York and L.A. and stuff. I'd say like a lot of America is like me, I think. Like random small towns or middle-sized cities and towns or smaller communities just scattered all across the United States, everywhere, the most random places imaginable. Just people living their lives. Anyway, that's kind of what I think of, because that I guess that's kind of like what I think of myself.
Understanding that can be extremely helpful. And those people across this country, they do have an influence on federal policy, and they are people we can turn to help us advance projects, solve problems, and just keep some level of continuity.
As a final question, do you have a fondest memory of your time here?
Oh gosh. I have so many fond memories. We have so many friends and so many.
Her fondest memory is Joe Biden getting inaugurated. The last day Trump was in office. That's her fondest memory, I bet. No, what is it?
Wonderful people that we've met. I have to say, traveling the country, hiking in Arizona. And in West Virginia, I like to hike. Just meeting people I've been to a couple of farms on my family. One side of my family is a farming family.
Okay.
I've loved that. I love getting out and meeting Americans all over the country. I've really appreciated that. I have found nothing but kindness. And welcoming arms in all of these interactions, even if we didn't totally agree on everything.
Thank you.
I like that because I do think Americans get a bad reputation for a lot of stuff. But I do think Americans are like good at being kind, decent people, especially the further out into random parts of the U.S. you go, I'd say. Anyway, I like her answer there. That's very nice. This whole thing was really insightful. She had so much like valuable insight into American culture, obviously, because she's a Canadian who's like been entrenched in our culture and our politics, and she has managed to come out the last 8 years remarkably like poised and optimistic, and I like that too. But she gave a very realistic kind of dissertation on how things are going, where things are going, and that's not all looking great for the US, but it's not looking horrible. Like maybe there's a little light, but I don't know. I got a lot out of this. I'm really glad I took a look at this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on this discussion about the relationship between Canada and the US. And that'd be cool to hear about, especially if you're Canadian. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canadian stuff that I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.